Hello, my name is Maurice Kempner. I'm an attorney and a real estate broker. I'm a consultant. So we're going to talk today about marriage and relationship. Shouldn't I get into some kind of a marriage or personal relationship with a significant other? So there's a lot of things to consider, and I'm just going to give you some guidelines. This doesn't mean these are all the guidelines there are. I don't pretend to say I know all of those things. These are just some of the main things that I was taught to consider and some of the things I've learned in my own relationships over time. So, one of the first questions I would ask if you're thinking about getting married is first of all, what's the purpose of your marriage, right? What's the primary purpose of your marriage? And that really has to do with what's the primary purpose of your family, and that really has to do with what's the primary purpose of your life. And we're going to make separate videos about those things. But there should be some kind of a purpose for you getting married, and that usually has something to do with making or establishing a family, right? And most people, when they go out and they get married, they just do it because everybody else does it. I mean, it doesn't seem like a good reason to me. So I think it's better to, this is my opinion, like I say, to have some reason for getting married. Why are you doing it? What goals are you trying to accomplish? What's the purpose of this relationship, right? Now, let's say you want to be in love, you want to have a partner, and you want to have children, right? So if you're thinking about having children, then one of the questions I would ask yourself about this potential mate that you're going to be with is this somebody that I would want to be my mom or dad? If they were your mom or dad or parent, would you be happy with that? Would you like that? I mean, I think a lot of people that get in these relationships and they don't even think about that question, but I think it's a very important question. The other thing I think is most of these marriages, I so I've talked to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people all the time. I probably talk to at least 1,000 people a year between all my appointments that I have and them and their spouse and whatnot that I talk to. So once you talk to a lot of people, you start to see a lot of trends. People start telling you about things they do. If you only have a few friends, you only talk to a few people, which is what most people do in their life. You really don't see a lot of these trends. You talk to lots and lots of people, you start to see things that um, other people just don't see. Now, the way I was raised is it's better to have a higher purpose in your life than yourself, right? So for me, if I'm going to be in a relationship with somebody, they need to be a higher purpose to me than I am to myself, right? Most people, they don't think of that kind of thing. You talk to them, you see them talk about, well, who are you looking for? What kind of person do you want? Well, they need to do this, they need to do that, they need to make a certain amount of money, they have to be funny, they have to do all these things to meet my needs, right? They're talking about meeting their needs, right? Well, that's not prioritizing uh, somebody above yourself. So, one of the things I think is good to ask yourself, especially if you want the marriage to last, or increase your chances of likelihood to last is it in the best interest of the person that you want to get married to or establish a relationship? Is it in their best interest to marry you, right? Don't just think about what's in your best interest or what you want, right? And is it in your best interest to marry them, right? So they should be thinking about that when it comes to you. Each person, I think, should think of the other person as a higher priority to them than they are to their own selves, right? I think this increases your chances of success. Now, what'll happen is you'll talk to somebody about this, and they'll sit there and they'll say, "Oh, well, sure, that's what my priorities are, whatever." And then after you're with them for a while, you realize that's not really true, right? And this doesn't mean you're not ever going to have conflicts or have to make compromises or whatever, but you start to realize that's not true. So if you're this way, if you prioritize somebody else and they don't prioritize you back, they're just going to take advantage of you and eat you alive. And so this is something you have to look out for. Now, some of the other things are risk management. So a lot of people that come to me and they say, "Do you think I should get married?" Well, I mean, that depends on who you're going to marry, right? But on the other hand, as an attorney, I'm just telling you, I think it'd be like malpractice tell somebody it's okay to be to get married. I mean, there's a lot of risk, right? I mean, this is a personal decision. And in this video, I'm just going to tell you some of the things, like I said, that have come to light. So, one of the things that I think is a good thing to look for in somebody you're going to marry too, if you want to stay married, is do they have a committed personality, right? Now, how do you know that, right? Because if they have a committed personality, that means there's somebody who is going to keep on doing something. They're not going to give up. They're not going to quit or whatever. So it's much more likely that you're going to stay married to somebody like that. So if this person you're considering, if they've had a lot of different jobs, they start a lot of things but don't finish very many of them, they start school and don't finish, they have a lot of relationships, a lot of jobs, things like that. This is not somebody who's probably committed. And people have these personality traits and they tend to deal with issues in their lives based on their personality traits, right? That's just common sense, right? So if they don't have the personality trait where they like to see things through to the end, they're probably not going to have that personality, that committed personality trait when it comes to you or your family or your marriage. One of the things you can look for now, a lot of people that say, "Well, how many times have you been married?" They'll ask other people that. I don't think that's really a good question because, like I say, I see these trends in my clients. I'll have people that'll come in and they will have lived with somebody here for 2 or 3 years, lived with somebody there for 2 or 3 years, another person over here all through college and then some or whatever, maybe 4 or 5 times, and but they've only been married once. In other words, they have one marriage license. Well, I don't think that's somebody who's been married once. I think that's somebody who's been married multiple times, right? And that doesn't mean just because somebody's been married multiple times that they don't have a committed personality. I mean, I've been married multiple times, but 3 times to be exact. But I've been married to my last wife here for a long, long time. And sometimes things don't work out, or there's reasons why it can't last. And that doesn't mean people aren't committed or that things went bad, right? But um, so so that's another way to look at this, right? Like not so much if they've been married before, how many times, but how many of these kind of relationships that they've been into, and how many times have they been moving around here and there? Because they're more likely then to do that with you. And when you're in a relationship, I remember Tony Robbins talking about this. And he says it's like going out in a car. You're in a relationship with everybody else on the road, right? You hope they're going to stay in their lane, follow the speed limit, not drive drunk, and all these things, right? But you take this risk in this relationship with everybody else on the road. And if you don't get the benefits of getting in your car and driving all kinds of places and doing all kinds of stuff, right? Those are the benefits for the risk you take. But somebody can really mess you up. So you put on your seatbelt, you watch out what's going on, you take precautions, you mitigate the risk, right? It's the same way in a personal relationship. Another thing I think it's good to look for is bad habits because, like I said, these are just kind of personality traits, and you can't really change people. You really shouldn't try to change people, whatever they are. So, like if somebody smokes and that's not for you, you shouldn't try to change that, in my opinion. You just have to decide if you're going to accept it. You're going to accept that they drink. You're going to accept that they smoke. If you can't accept these things, then move on because that's what people are. And it is really hard for adults to change these kind of things. And then it causes resentment and other things. So you're going to have to accept something that you might not like. But this idea of changing people, one of the main things that people want in life is they want to feel accepted. So you got to accept this person with all their personality traits and all their idiosyncrasies. Constantly trying to change somebody is you're just basically telling them that you're not satisfied with. So accept it. Um, Now, the other thing I would say is that you want to plan for death, demise, or change, right? So people can change. Things can happen. They can be converted to some religion. They can become some kind of activist. They can become crippled. or you get old. I think that changes things from when you're young. And like I said, where I see a lot of these trends that people have, like you would be surprised how many people are married and they're at best friends. They decide it's not really a good idea for their family or the kids or whatever to get divorced. So they kind of leave separate lives under the same roof. They sleep in different bedrooms. They do whatever they do. This is a really common thing out there, more common than you might think. So you might want to plan for things possibly going this way or possibly ending up in a divorce, or somebody might die. They might get a disease and die. They might get cancer. They might be killed in an accident. I've had clients have this happen to their spouses all the time over the years. And most of the time they have no plan for that. And just because you get divorced, I don't think that means necessarily the marriage is a failure, right? A lot of relationships go on for a long time. One of my favorite examples of that in business is, for example, Costco and American Express. They were in business for a long time with each other. They made a lot of money together. And then they had a big argument. They had a falling out. So now Costco went with Visa, right? You could call that a divorce, right? A business divorce. But that doesn't mean that all the years that they were together doing business together was just a total failure because they ended their relationship. And that's kind of how you have to look at divorce if it comes to that. But you want to plan for that. You want to sit back and look, if I marry this person, it doesn't work out, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to them? Right? What's going to happen to my kids? You owe it to not just yourself, but if you're in business, which most of my clients have businesses and things, or a lot of them do business, real estate, things like that. Um, there's a lot of people involved. There's employees, there's investors, there's business relationships, things like that going on. You owe it to all these people that are going to be affected by what happens in your relationship with somebody, your long term relationship. Your children is another one. You owe it to them to be prepared for anything that might happen to mitigate the effects, this kind of thing. Like in a business where you have employees, you want to have continuity. What's going to happen? Who's going to run the business? That kind of thing. The same with kids. You want to work these things out while everybody's in love and everybody's getting along. That's the best way to do that. And that might be prenuptial or transmutation agreements. Prenuptial agreements are agreements you make before you get married. A transmutation agreement is an agreement you make after you're married and you're transmuting property into some other form or away from some other agreement you have. Now, prenuptials, just because somebody wants a prenuptial, that doesn't really mean anything other than they want to have their own agreement, right? If you don't do a prenuptial agreement, the state, whatever state you're in, they have one for you, right? So, like, it's usually common law or community property laws because they have these laws or these regulations because people don't make these agreements and they need to. What happens if somebody joins some activist group or religion or whatever, and they want to give all the money and devote everything to that? Well, the other person should have a say in that. So there needs to be some kind of contract or understanding. And if people don't write this up themselves, the states have this in family law codes that say this is how much you can give, this is what you can do on your own without permission from the other person. You can or can't sell the house without permission, things like that. So I think it's a good idea to have these kind of agreements as part of the plan, right? Make your own plan. You don't have to just have some default plan that the government has. And this is all something that you would have in your family office, right? And then you need to have your family goals and values. Okay, so what's the primary purpose of your family, for example? So it's to provide love, acceptance, help people feel accepted, security, financial security, other kinds of security to make it so people aren't lonely. There's all these things that should be part of your values as a family, and you're going to want to make sure that somebody that you're considering marrying has these kind of values that are consistent with yours. So that's what I have to say about marriage and family. I'm sure there's a lot more to say, but these are just some of the few things that I would consider. So uh, I'll just say one more thing. Some people don't like this, but I think it's important that the person be kind of equal to you financially. I think it's a good idea to do that. I'm not saying you have to, or it's bad if you don't, or whatever. But so many times I see people get damaged, they get wiped out. I mean, look, just look at people you know in your life, right? People you work with, things like that. The ones that have been the most devastated, it's usually some kind of a relationship. It's wiped them out financially. They don't get to see their kids as much anymore. They're in emotional hell. What's happening to the kids? Where are they now? The new spouse is bad, that kind of thing, right? So if you are in a relationship um, and it comes to an end, you don't want to be at a disadvantage. Like when I was 12 years old, my mom came to me and she said, "We got to have a talk about puberty. You're going into puberty, and your dad won't do it." And my mom, she was kind of religious, and she didn't like to talk about sexual things too much in detail like that. So she said, "I'm just going to tell you this story, and as long as you remember this story, this is all you need to know, right? And you'll be fine." So she said, I said, "Okay, Mom, what's the story? Let's get this over with." So she said, there was this little ant, and he was coming home and he had to cross the train track. He got to the track and he looked both ways and he started to go across, but the little ant had miscalculated when he went across. A train came and sliced his ass off, and his ass fell down one side of the track and he fell down the other. And he ran down to the ant doctor. "Doctor, doctor, my ass, my ass." And the ant doctor says, "Well, hurry, go up and get it. Bring it back to me before it's too late. Maybe I can sew it back on." So the little ant goes running up the hill and over the track, and another train came, and this time sliced his head off, right? Because he was just so excited to get up there and get his ass and bring it back. He didn't even take time to look the second time. And his little head goes that way, his little thorax goes the other way, and that was the end of the poor little ant. Now, Maury, do you know the moral of this story? No, Mom. What is it? Don't lose your head over a piece of ass. Now, I'm just telling you, this story really helped me because anytime I started to feel any feelings or my clothes started to come off or something like that, or I got in some kind of situation with somebody, I started thinking, is my head on the track, right? All this stuff that I've been through in relationships, my head was never on the track. I've never suffered any serious, I mean, sure, you suffer some emotional pain when you break up with somebody and everything, but I've never been wiped out. Look around you at all the people who have been wiped out. Look what's coming down the track. That's what I'm telling you. That little story was a better lesson to me than all the health education classes that I was forced to take in junior high school that talked about all the details about sex and precautions and all that. That has served me well. Keep that in mind, and it's a good story for your kids if you got any, if they're entering that time period in their life. Um, Tell them. Anyway, that's all I have on that. I hope that helps.